Welcome back to Four Elements Press LGBTQ Authors Series. This is Alex, the host today, and we are sitting down today with Jameel Mayers, and we're going to talk about his work that he has out right now. He also is engaged in a podcast, so we can learn about where we can hear more from him and a little bit about his other works that deal more with parenting and being a father. Thank you for being with us, Jameel. If you want to give us a little introduction to you and a little bit about what you're working on today.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. And first of all, thanks for inviting me onto this podcast. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to provide space and audience for our LGBTQ community because I think representation is important. For me specifically, I am 45 years old. I'm married to my husband now 22 years. I have a 12-year-old son. And I've kind of recently transitioned out of a professional role into another one that has allowed me a lot of flexibility to be creative. So I've started to dive into writing books, and I've also, as you correctly mentioned, started doing some podcasting as well. So on the book side, and I'm sure we'll dive into them. But I have two of them with a third one on the way at some point before the end of the year. So I've been kind of busy, but and I also have four podcasts that I'm actually doing as well. I know it's been a pretty busy year for me, but I'm excited. It's the creative part of me has kind of always been there, and it's really an opportunity now to say, if you're ever going to do it, now is the time. So I'm just happy to start this journey. I'm at the very beginning of it in my mind, so 4 years from now, come back and visit, and maybe, it'll be bigger than it is today.
yeah, well, thank you for talking a little about your vision because you definitely share the vision of our company and of this series. So we're really focused on that next stage of, okay, this is the time to start doing these things. And
Mhm.
then what does it look like on the other side of that so that we can know the vision that we're kind of fighting for? Um, so let's start with a little bit about your works too, because I think those kind of go hand in hand with the podcasts. And then tell us all the different podcasts that you are on, because that's a lot of work. And I'm sure everyone can definitely look to you and look at those for a little bit of support during this crazy time that we're in.
So I have two Instagrams. One is for my writing side because I wanted to make sure to kind of segregate the audiences, just make sure I wasn't confusing people, right? So my handle for my writing side is J Mayers, P as in Paul. And the first book that I put out this year is called Elysium. And the genesis of it comes from my family and I having vacationed in St. Thomas. So St. Thomas is beautiful, beautiful, lush, green, has a lot of color in a lot of the housing that they keep there. The people are super nice, the music, the food. But we stayed at this beautiful beach house at the bottom of this mountainside. I mean, it's an island. I mean, you can't get lost, right? But we stayed at this beautiful house, and the experiences that I had there, going down to the beach and crystal clear waters, and just traveling around in a jeep and with family and stuff like that. When I came back, I said, I have to write something. I don't know what, but something that has this environment in mind. So I wrote a sci-fi book that's, it's part one of a three-part series that has this as a prominent background. But I wanted to make sure that it had a dominant LGBTQ character. So the primary character in this book is LGBTQ, but it is not a book about him being gay. It just so happens that he is gay as he meets, and goes through the world in romance and deals with a lot of loss from, on his family side, and dealing with a lot of the sci-fi that I kind of pull in. And writing these books for me is like watching a movie because I love watching movies. So in my mind, and it's going to sound kind of weird, but maybe a lot of authors do this as well. I watch the movie and I write down what I see. So that's the way I write the book. And then, I go through all my edits, and 10 million edits later, you throw the book up online and it's good to go. So that's book number one.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you bring in your travels and like having that be part of the inspiration for the work. Um, that's some of those times are like the highlights of our life, and we really like when I travel, everything I can learn, like I'm pulling in because these things that we notice and these things that we experience when we write about them, it allows us to also put those thoughts into the characters' minds and see how they kind of react. And then a lot of writers journal, and that's kind of similar. Like you're
Mhm.
journaling today, you're kind of like developing a voice, so that you can kind of and a not only a voice but a method of writing to sink into, and then your character is always going to be your characters, just like you mentioned. They're going to have their uniqueness to them. And it's nice to also hear your perspective on the character being LGBTQ, but the book not being specifically about that. Um, a lot of times, like, you know, we kind of get fit into different genres as LGBTQ writers, for whether people are, if they're writing to get noticed or in certain genres or that's their genre that they love. Um, there you can fall into the story only being about being LGBT.
Yep.
And it kind of, you need something to also show that we are people, but we're actively in the world, and this is how we experience life, you know? How do you
Well,
kind of,
one of the
yeah,
things that's always surprised me is I'm a Star Trek fan. I love Star Wars. I mean, anything with stars in it, I love. So in that space, there's always been room to create what we don't see in our community today, right? Gay characters, humans falling for aliens, with 5 legs and 10 arms. And, it's like whatever you can think of, there's romance involved. And I wanted to make sure that we continue to contribute to that type of flexibility because it is not abnormal to have LGBTQ characters in our stories. They're there. And that's not what they show up with. They just show up with whatever circumstance is around them, this one being sci-fi, and they just happen to have fallen in love or had a relationship or a connection or are dealing with the LGBTQ angle, but that's not the focal point. So I wanted that to show through and showcase in this novel. So
yeah, yeah, it adds depth to just the variety of works out there.
mhm.
And, part of my goal too in writing contemporary fantasy is to showcase a little bit more of that because it also seems like we have the classic tragic gay experience movie or book, and then it gets very popular, and then like just the romance. So
Right,
we have
right.
to show that we're in every genre, we're writing in every genre, and that also adds depth to the genre so that, other readers can learn. Sometimes they're not getting, these thoughts or these getting exposure to these characters, to these people, unless they're reading.
Very true. And I don't want anyone to have to seek out an LGBTQ book to find LGBTQ characters. Like, go find a sci-fi book, and it just so happens to have an LGBTQ character in it. Now, I would say that I certainly appreciate a lot that has come because I've read LGBTQ centered books with characters and romances. That stuff is appealing. I love it. Um, so I appreciate that. I think that's laid a lot of the groundwork for where we're able to venture now. But for me personally, I would have read a lot more books with LGBTQ characters in them if they were sci-fi books, right? So it's like, yeah, let me pick that up. I'll read it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we often write what we wanted to read in our younger
exactly.
years.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your other projects that you're working on in writing, because this goes into your inspiration for writing at this stage in your life too.
Yeah, so my second book is called Paper Cradles. So that is I guess a true story about me and my husband and my child and how we went through the adoption process, right? It dabbles a little bit in the before kids and the after kids kind of a segmentation, if you will. All parents go through that, right? We know all of our parents as parents. We don't know them as people before they were our moms and dads. So I wanted to make sure to put that in my book so that when my son reads it, he can realize that we're humans too. And because he looks at us like we're ancient, born in the 1900s, which is kind of true. Anyway, I don't want to talk about how old we are. But the book documents going through the adoption process, a lot of the paperwork that goes into that, the legal process, our first encounter with our son, the discussions that Nicholas and I, my husband, had to have as adults, to be able to be on the same page with wanting to have a kid, how we were going to parent, creating safe spaces for ourselves, right? To make errors and adjustments, and knowing that we are now raising someone who is going to impact society at some point, right? Getting on the road for the long game, because by the time we see the magic that he can do, he'll be in his early 20s. So I mean, we're in it. We love this kid. He's amazing. He's changed our lives. The things that we've been able to do since having him has really been us pouring into him, right? Things that we've always wanted to do as kids, and we were like, why don't we travel the world more often? Our parents had their own circumstances and reasons why we didn't do that at the time, but we're in a position to do it. So now we're doing it, right? We travel to different countries, we take cruises, we road trip, we go camping, so we try our best to infuse a lot of that into him so that he can have exposure to the rest of the world, and not just what exists here in the United States, which sometimes can be its own microclimate, if you will. So
Yeah. Yeah, those experiences are really, they build a lot of different characters, you know.
mm.
Every new experience you're kind of changing. So to also write down your experience throughout the process of adoption is incredible too, because um, I'm sure there's not a lot of resources for that, and for you having to have gone through like everything, every stage, and now to also have the experience of raising your son, that's awesome, and to kind of put that in the book. Um,
Yeah, when I started the process, not writing the book, but the adoption process, I looked for so many resources. There are tons out there, but it's for straight couples, right? There were a lot, if any, for the LGBTQ perspective, which, as we know, has a lot of similarities to the traditional way, but it is not the same. There are things that we need to consider, things we need to be aware of. There are a lot of obstacles and hurdles. I would say that one of the challenges that I document in the book is, you get a list of all the agencies you can pair yourself up with in order to be certified for adoption. I would say 9 out of 10 will not accept a gay couple at the time. So we were left with just one. So there was a successful pairing there because they were like, we don't care who you are, just show up. You want kids? We want you to have kids. Like, if you pass all our tests, let's do it. Where others were a little bit more, Christian based, which is dog whistle, if you will, for no thank you. And we took it on the chin because we knew what we were getting into. I mean, we're no strangers to being gay in this world. Um, Now, luckily, it's gotten better a little bit. I think there's still a long way to go, but this book at least allows for others to be able to read it and say, okay, I'm going through the same thing, or I saw the same thing, or yeah, I can do that. So that at the minimum is what I hope someone can get from that book.
yeah, I mean, even the conversations, because this is definitely outside of, you know, maybe some straight couples conversations about having children. What kind of conversations did you both like have, and what were your concerns? And then what did you learn that you weren't maybe concerned about going into the process, that you kind of learned that, oh, should have actually like been a bigger topic of conversation.
So what I could say is at the beginning, obviously there's always a sit down, hey, do you want kids? Right? I think couples have an opportunity to do that earlier in their relationship, perhaps as a means to say we should be in a relationship, right? Do you want to have kids? No. Okay, well, I do, so this probably isn't going to work. Um, I've been with Nicholas for 22 years, so it did not come up at the early stages of our relationship because we weren't even thinking about kids then. But when it did come up, roughly about 15 years ago now, golly, I feel so old when I throw numbers out there. Uh, we were both in that mind frame. We were, yeah, I think we're ready for kids. So just that conversation alone, oftentimes is hard because if you're not on the same page, you may get an answer that you don't expect. And then you have to learn how to deal with that, right? But I would say some of the challenges that we experiences or some of the surprises was really going through the certification process to be a foster parent to then adopt through the state of Arizona, noticing that as a gay couple, the intentionality that goes into wanting a child requires a lot of legwork, right? You have to get certified, you have to get a background check, you have to learn this, you have to sign that. You have to go to court, and it took us a year and a half to finally adopt our kid. And that's a fast track, right? And it could take a lot longer. I mean, we got Jake. It was very serendipitous the way that Jacob came to be with us, which is different than how our friends had it. Their process was a little lengthier, a lot rougher, because you still have their original parents to deal with until they're adopted. Nonetheless, one of the things that surprised me was the list of things. What kind of kid do you want? How old should they be? What race are you looking for? Male, female. It's yeah, it's like a shopping list, and
Oh my
it's
God.
such a weird feeling to have to think of a child like that. You're like, wow, am I like this is a catalog? But they need to know, what are you willing to accept? We don't want to give you a 14-year-old and you're looking for an infant. Like, let's be clear, let's be direct, let's be honest. So it
Yeah.
does force you to be very, again, intentional about what you're trying to do. Don't say A if you're not looking for A, because more than likely you're going to end up with A. So
Yeah.
these kids have gone through enough. They don't need to have rejection on day one. Yeah.
No way. Yeah. And even like the work that it takes to kind of understand their perspectives too, kind of before you engage in the adoption. I'm sure that was that part of the training too in
Absolutely.
education.
Absolutely. I call it shock and awe. What they do is they give you most, not all, right, of the potential scenarios that these kids could have endured to be in the system, from accidental removal, or a parent was arrested because they were too drunk, but that's a single parent and there was no one else. So now they're in foster care until the parents out of the drunk tank. Then they're back to their parents. Great. That's a happy ending, right? And then you have those parents that are, on drugs and can't really manage their kids. They have those that are doing, a lot of sexual assault and abuse and stuff like that, where kids are removed a little too late and, experience that or have seen too much, or, you know, malnutrition is a big one as well. And so not every parent should be a parent, but when you have couples, I always get twisted, LGBTQ couples that want to be parents and they're being denied that, in the state of Arizona, we have over 12,000, I believe, kids in the foster system. Like, I don't understand it. It has to be easier.
Is because I haven't done too much research into adoption. However, we do focus a little bit on like the political angle on Four Elements Press, just because engaging in society for us is very political, and we live in a democracy where we should all have a healthy sense of what's going on in the world and in our country. Are there any states that you know of that make it super difficult for LGBTQ couples to adopt to the point that it's almost impossible, or is that kind of over with?
I don't know of any that would come to the top of my mind that would say, hey, this one specifically, be careful. I do know specifically here in Arizona, it was difficult for us just because, again, the agency availability. So the agency certifies you as a foster parent, and then the agency liaises with the state in order to connect parents with the available child. So our path was foster to adopt. So we didn't go to an adoption agency, we went to a fostering agency. And the reason we chose that route is because everything is paid for by the state. So your classes are paid for by the state, your court fees and your attorney fees are paid for by the state, and even the university education for your child is paid for by the state. So when he's ready to go to ASU out here, it's all covered by the state. Who would say no to that? However, the trade-off is you don't know how long you're going to wait to find a match. You don't know if the first, the second, or the third match is right for you. There may be some disconnects there that would prevent that from being, the permanent home. Um, you don't know if that parent is going to be successful in the things that they need to complete for the state that allows for them to get their child back. So it's a heart tug situation, right? You get really close to these kids, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're going back to your parents, the ones that put you in the system in the first place. Got it. So it's yeah, it's a little different. And of course, on my podcast, which I'm sure we'll get into next, we talk about surrogacy as well, which is another slippery slope, but that one costs. There's a financial impact to that. So more to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. And because you mentioned friends and their adoption experiences, um, in relation to your podcast, do you have friends or know of experiences related to surrogacy?
Yeah,
And
so on my podcast, Fathernetics, which is also the handle for Instagram, by design, it is to discover, understand, and expose, talk about the positive and or whatever impact, negative. Sometimes they're just baseline experiences anyone has had with their parents, more so their fathers, father figures, anyone who is in a fatherly role. So it can be like a coach or a brother or an uncle that you have in your life. And oftentimes it is the mother playing the father figure if you're a single mom, right? So we're all getting our father influence from somewhere. And generationally speaking, we want to understand, where did that parent get it from? What have you taken in to yourself as an adult that you've gotten from your father? What are some of the things that as a child you were like, I don't like that, therefore I'm not going to be like that? And then the last piece is always, what are you going to pass down to a child that you may or may not have, right? Or the kids that come around you, your nieces and nephews, or if you're a teacher, what are some of the values that you may be sharing with them? I often say that we are all role models, whether we want to be or not. People see you, they interact with you, how you behave, how you interact with them is going to leave an impression. Whether it's a big one or not is going to be, up to whoever's interacting with you. But you will always be a role model. So if you're providing a negative impact to someone, they're going to remember that, and maybe they don't want to interact with you anymore. And maybe they will take that and say, I don't want to be like that. That you're still a role model, whether you want to be or not. So in those conversations, we often get into, your parent. How did you come out? How did you get your child? How are you guys a family? How did you expand your circle? A lot of people have done adoption through adoption agencies. Some of my local friends that I've had before the podcast did foster to adopt, like we did, right around the same time. As a matter of fact, we bonded over it. And then some of the people that I talked to have gone through surrogacy as well, and that process I am still learning myself, and I intentionally go in blind to some of these interviews because I want to ask questions that are not clinical. I want to ask questions that are not interview style. just, hey, you said something. Tell me more about that. Like, why'd you do that? Or why'd you decide to go down that path? Or why does it cost that much? Or, why did the surrogate mother wait until the 11th hour to say no, thank you? Like, how does that happen? So, and you hear a lot about that on TV. I'm sure you've seen television episodes of people who've gone for adoption and then they have the kid, and then at the very last minute they're like, no, I want to keep the kid. And it's the Hollywood Hallmark moment. Everybody's crying, but that happens in real life. And it's like, how do you recover from that? How do you say, I'm going to do this again? I'm going to try again? So those are the conversations that I love having, because I want others to recognize that they're not going through this on their own. There are other people that are trying the same thing. There are other people that are making the same missteps, or there are other people that are finding the same value or ways around the system, or they're providing gotchas that you should know about before you start your process. I want people to have that community. So that is the genesis of Fathernetics, and that's the one that takes the most of my time. And I love it because you get to talk to so many people, and it's really energizing. So if you know anybody, let me know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, we have friends of the show, and we'll definitely share your information with them, of course.
So these people are writing books as well.
Yeah.
Some of them
Oh,
are
yeah.
journeys about their surrogacy experience, which I think is necessary. Surrogacy for in general is one thing, but surrogacy again from an LGBTQ perspective has its nuances, and we need to know what those are.
Yeah, and even as we, look to that third step, like what is the future look like? Really, these conversations are what show us the opportunity for us to fill as a community. In terms of, adoption, surrogacy in the LGBTQ space, it looks like there's opportunity for maybe another agency out there dedicated to LGBTQ people. We have to, in this time, I think, really think about creating not only space for ourselves in the systems that exist, but also we need to look at creating systems that exist outside of and that are counter to just the standard, because the standard we see isn't working. Um, how do your other podcasts also relate to, your message? And then I want to hear a little bit about your upcoming books too.
So my other podcasts have nothing to do with my message. The other ones
Right.
are, so I have one that is it's a storytelling podcast. It's called What Had Happened Was. And that is fictional, right? So it's telling a whole bunch of stories that are not grounded in anything reality, but they're told in a very dramatic way that people can listen to. They're anywhere between 5 to 12 minutes long. It's just for entertainment purposes. And the other one I have is called Finn at Night, Finn at Night. And it's more of a bedtime storytelling for kids. So you just, you kind of put the podcast on, you say goodnight, you may sit there, you may not, and Finn just kind of takes you through dreamland. Um, and those are roughly anywhere in between 5 to 10 minutes long. It's not designed to play all night. It's designed to put your kid to sleep. See you later. And
Yeah.
then the last one I started is a movie review, and I just started that one like a couple weeks ago. So I have like two movie reviews because I love movies. I write books like I'm watching movies. So I go see a lot of movies, and I figure why not just put my opinion out there on some of these titles, and if someone checks it out, great. If not, that's okay too.
Yeah, that's exciting. So let's transition that into what you are writing now, because you mentioned you have something coming out by the end of this year.
So so I'm working on two things. One is the follow-up to Elysium, right?
Okay.
So it's part of a trilogy. So this is the middle book. Um, and I'm near completion on that one. I have to go back and like read it. I had to put it down and come back because I need to reset my mind because I wasn't able to get past a certain part. So I have to put it down and come back to be able to say, okay, this makes sense now. Um, so I'm excited about that. A lot of people have read it, certainly my family, but they'll read anything I write. But apart from that, a lot of people have.
That's a good, that's really
And
good.
it always is, right? They're very supportive. Um, but I'm excited about where that could take us for the last book, and that will probably come to some probably mid next year to close the trilogy on this sci-fi book. And just to give you more on the trilogy, it's really about three different worlds colliding, right? So there, scientifically speaking, there is a bridge between all three of these worlds, and it's kind of traveling back in time, but not really. So the third world, people travel from the third world through the middle world to Earth, and there's some time dilation that happens, which makes everything feel like you're going back in time, but you're not really. Anyway, to really understand that, you got to read the book. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to explain without really getting into spoilers, if you will.
Yeah, well, sci-fi readers will definitely be interested in that.
Yeah, I love it because it's got the sci-fi undertones. The first book has very little sci-fi undertones. The second book is like let's just fall right into it. Um, the other book is not sci-fi, but it's more from like a gaming heart. I'm a big gamer. I love Xbox and everything that it provides in PlayStations. So this one is more around individuals who sign up to be beta testers and end up lost in this video game world that they're unaware that they're in at the time that fantastical things happen. And
Interesting.
again, the characters, the my characters will always either have a hint or be outright gay. And I think because I think again, when I walk into bookstores and I look for an LGBTQ book, it's usually really just romance. I met someone in high school. And listen, we all dream, especially someone at my age, that we had the opportunity to be romantic like that in high school, and we didn't have that chance, right? So reading something like that is like, wow, what could have happened back then. So we need books like that. But we also need books that sit in the other categories that just so happens to have gay characters, you know. So
Yeah,
that's my goal.
yeah, that's something to being conscious of in my second book because I bring in a host of new characters and they're mostly immortal. So they're people who have had many different like lifetimes and have experienced everything that they could in life just because that's the nature of people. At some point, you get to the point where you're like, well, after a few lifetimes, you might try something different. But
So
all
did I understand correctly that some of your characters in your first book are indirectly based on your relationships?
so the characters, the story of the Immortal Philosophers, Dylan Eagle Gods Chronicles, Sunset in the Valley of Now and Then, is it started loosely based on like me writing a character similar to my partner, meeting a character similar to me. Um, and I started writing it as short stories. So it quickly evolved into something very different. But in the beginning, I was trying to figure out, and this is part of just the writing process, I think.
Right.
Um, and even not only the writing process, but the marketing process, the publishing process. Do I want this to be more of a literary fiction novel, or do I want this to be like full, contemporary fantasy? So, and with a YA kind of base to it. So as I figured that out, I continued writing it in the more urban fantasy genre, and then kind of went back and edited in, a lot of like the mystery and, the foreshadowing to the characters he meets right at the beginning of the book, but, they don't expose themselves immediately.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So you and your boyfriend are, or husband, whomever that may be, are immortal, is what you're saying.
So yeah, so in the Immortal Philosophers,
In real life. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
yeah, in real life, we're just waiting to find out if it's true or not now.
kidding. Fair enough.
But it's set on the Jersey Shore, and the one character is trying to escape like living with homophobic friends, and through this process, he's kind of coming out in a way that he is liberating himself to kind of distance himself from the toxicity that was keeping him kind of closed off and afraid of experiencing anything that he wanted to experience. So as he separates himself from these homophobic friends, he takes a summer down the Jersey Shore to work from home and do like cover designing. And he gets wrapped up in this mystery because the one friend he can't get away from and is like coming down to Ocean City to find him. And he's like, "No, I just met this guy. Like, I'm going on a date. He's bringing his whole family down here. They all know what I look like. Like, I've hung out with them all the time. How am I gonna go on this date, have this be successful, not ruin my chances?" And then, because he's looking to make new friends and stuff, so he's kind of torn in that way. But then it turns out the friend has more secretive, magical, and nefarious plans for him that he has to quickly learn from this new potential love interest, how to survive his first weekend down the Jersey Shore.
Interesting. Well, I told you I was gonna buy it, so I will. And when I do, I will post it on my Instagram as proof because as we all know, everybody says they're gonna buy your book and then they never do. Which is fine. Again, we write because we love to write, not because we're trying to break a record, at least not yet. Um,
Right, we're getting there.
yeah, not yet. We'll get there for sure.
It's a building process. And, this is part of building that platform to show that, this is a space for our voices,
Hmm.
for people in the community to follow, because this is going to be the spot where you're going to find your next read. And um, as we as we get more and more author interviews, because we plan to do have one launch every weekend for continuing into the future. And this is like the free service that we as Four Elements Press just happily provide because this space is needed and this space is going to be the spot.
Hmm.
Hopefully.
Hmm.
It definitely works. And I think as we see a opportunity closing in a lot of other areas at this time, um, people are conscious and looking for some place that they can feel community and even a little support. Because as we know, like when rhetoric like this increases in the national dialogue, things like queer suicides go up, things like queer homelessness go up, because it creates an environment where these things are permitted and hate speech is permitted, and it's just not okay. And we do have to reach out to the people in our lives who might be feeling that and let them know that we're there to support them too. It's really important.
I agree. I agree. And it does take a lot of effort. It takes a lot of intentionality. It takes a lot of being able to be found, if that makes sense, because we can create all the spaces we want to, but if you can't find us, then there's no value there. So I do appreciate the work that you and your team are doing in just being able to interact, right, with different authors out there that would otherwise have no opportunity. As you said before, the political climate today doesn't necessarily allow for major publishing houses to accept a lot more than they're willing to tolerate when it comes to LGBTQ literary documents. Because some places are going the opposite. They're taking it off the shelf and they're burning it in small circles. So now that we have opportunities to have specific companies that are being visionary, I think the train just can't stop. And that's where we need to be with all the content that's out there, where people are trying to build communities. Not everybody's trying to do that, which is fine. I mean, not everybody needs to pick up the cross and run with it, right? But for those of us that are, I think that there's a special place in heaven for all of us. You know,
Definitely. Yes, definitely living in the light, even if others don't see that.
yeah, they'll come around.
Yeah, yeah. And that's part of it too. Like this dialogue creates that space for exposure. Uh, People might not be getting this in their everyday life. Living in a small town in South Jersey, New Jersey is one of the most diverse states, one of the most densely populated states, but there are rural areas. And people aren't having conversations with people outside of their communities. And if their community is all, you know, gung ho, let's have discrimination part of our everyday language, let's have hate part of our everyday language, that's all they're going to hear. And they're just going to go along with it because that's what's around them. But and really important for um, queer people in these communities to have maybe an online community where they can feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not crazy in the ways that the people around me might think I am. Or I'm not, there is love for me, there is worth for me. Part of,
That's the important part, right? Just being able to say, I see myself out there, and that alone can catapult someone into a different mindset, which is ideal.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even for our community I wanted to, in my work, feature and focus on a queer couple and how they navigate being together and um, to show that in fiction, because in a lot of ways, what kind of helped me come out was seeing gay YouTube couples and
Mhm.
just watching their vlogs and seeing that this is what love can look like. And it is everything that I, thought it would feel like in terms of watching it. And then you can have that too in your own life. It kind of allows a permission. So I wanted to show that and feature that in writing. And then, so my book one is book one. I'm working on book two. I'm almost finished. And then it's going to be a 7-book series. So book one, they're kind of getting to know each other as a couple. Book two, they're having different experiences and they have to kind of manage that not only as individuals, Dylan as someone who, just learned that he is immortal and just has developed immortal powers and is also out and in love and experiencing being gay for the first time openly.
Now I'm
Um,
curious about the genesis of all this. If they're not vampires, I'm like, okay, I want to know. Like how
yeah,
did I get here?
well, so some of the, and
Oh,
then,
don't tell me, I'll read it.
yeah, no, no, no. The other characters are immortal and they have like they all have different character.
Hmm.
Some of them are based off of maybe historical figures. And they're all getting into Dylan's head and giving him either like advice from a philosophical perspective or just from their own perspective in terms of how they think relationships should be, as people often do.
Yeah, incorrectly so.
Yeah.
It's the single people that give you relationship advice.
Well, yeah. Yeah, as the only, you know, relationships are a conversation and keep the conversation between the two of you so that you can kind of figure it out.
Exactly.
You can't figure it out, that's telling you something. So, if you're looking to have conversations with other people, then and do what you got to do. But
Communication is key.
yeah, yeah. So, what are your plans too for your upcoming works? And is your new book in the YA space too?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Um, I kind of have an affinity to make sure that the right audience is kind of absorbing all this. Not to say that, the older crowd wouldn't read YA, but um I think that's what, in my opinion, a lot of these movies that are out now, which people enjoy and then go back and read the books afterwards, are all in that category right now, right? That's what's hot today. Because I watch a lot of, Hunger Games and Maze Runner, and so I Maze Runner was fantastic. I read a lot of these books before they were movies, which is often a challenge, right? Because they never really live up to my imagination, but they're still pretty good. Nonetheless, I have like a list of 10 different ideas for book concepts that I already have, and I'm just kind of going through them, right? So when I'm done with one, I go through the list and go, okay, what piques my interests to start writing? And that's where this gaming one came in. As a matter of fact, probably about, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I had aspirations to be um a movie writer, or what do you call those? It's at the tip of my tongue. Anyway, to write movies,
Yeah.
basically.
Like a screenplay writer.
Screenplay. Thank you. Wow. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. So I've written like 5 screenplays. And because I've already written the screenplays, it's really like adapting those into books. So, I mean, the story's there, the framework's there. I just kind of have to reorient it to not be so clinically movie written, intro here, and this person raises their hand, and nobody wants to read that. So it needs to be a little bit more novel. So that is probably what is giving me the speed in writing some of these books, because they're already written. It's just a matter of reformatting them and polishing them and probably making them a little bit more modern, with gay characters. So those are my projects. Over the next 5 years, I probably have a book a year if I keep up that momentum.
Yeah. And then, I mean, throughout all that writing and even just experiencing life, I'm sure you're going to have more ideas come up as you go. And
Yes, every time I travel somewhere, it is I do like to document like the places I am. I take like videos and stuff like that, and I try to do some reviews and stuff like that. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that I need to be present, because if I'm not present, I can't remember the details to add into some of these books that I want to write, that are like on location writing, if you will. Um, I think that for me brings genuine background to a book when you're writing based on reality. Obviously, sci-fi is not quite that way, but it can be rooted in any location that you may travel here on the globe. Just change it up every ever so slightly. So creativity.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And when you also put your characters in these different places, you're gonna learn a little bit about them because they're gonna encounter different experiences that they wouldn't in their usual
exactly.
setting. Um, I like how you bring in your screenplay writing too, because um, I find the most successful YA books are very like heavily dialogue driven. I don't know if that's your experience, but um, with the screenplay being like the dialogue mostly, it seems like that'd be a really fun experience, kind of turning it into a book.
It is. I don't know if you've ever seen a screenplay like in hand. It is structurally, it is a lengthy document. It's like a page a minute, is what they say is the industry standard. So, if you have a 2 hour movie, then you've got, at least 180 pages worth of screenplay. So it's really designed to be a visual retelling with dialogue. I find that when I try to convert that into a novel, um, it requires changing a lot because now it's not necessarily giving instructions, it's more living the instructions. You kind of have to walk through the forest instead of telling someone that that is a forest. If you get my hinting.
Right. Yeah.
So so it does take a little bit of work, but what I do like about it is the framework is already there. So it doesn't require me to try to come up with the story from scratch, even though that can be fun. Elysium was from scratch. Um, but this gaming one is not. It's but it is my work, so technically it is from scratch. So
Yeah. And, it's the same way of using maybe like notes, I guess, rather
mhm.
than kind of like trying to fit it into the book. You're using it as kind of like the story and the plot structure to write the book. I'm getting that right?
Yep, you're absolutely correct. It gives me if I had to like quantify it, it gives me 40% of what would be in the book because by the time I start re-editing the book, it's changed and morphed and people are doing different things than they would otherwise in the movie. So and that's fine because it's a journey, right? You think it's gonna go one way and then you're like, let me try this, and now you're off into something else. So
Yeah, and that even speaks to as you're writing the story, being conscious of, the marketing, the genre, the audience expectation. So to, fit it, because you mentioned also fitting it to a more modern, maybe perspective. Um, those are all like strategic publisher hat type changes that will help you as long as you're conscious of them, kind of tailor the work to fit the reader's expectation to at least, get them to pick the book up
mm,
and, get through that first page, get through the first chapter and really feel like they're involved in the story, involved in the character. And do you have any like writing inspirations that you follow pretty regularly or maybe have like a style that is kind of inspired by?
I don't know. You know what? I for a while, and maybe some of new writers struggle with this as well, is I'm always like, okay, writing should look like this. And when I think about writing like that, it doesn't work for me. Like my mind is it's focused on, okay, do you have the right structure? I grew up reading a lot of John Grisham and Stephen King type books and stuff like that. And those are great books. But when I sit down to write, it doesn't come out that way.
Yeah.
And not to say that I have my own, weird style that no one else has. It's just I can't think of style. I just put it all down. And one of my first posts on Instagram, speaking from a published author's perspective, which I laugh about all the time because it's like, okay, I'm not an expert, but I tell people just write and then worry about the structure later. And because you by the time you give it its 15th pass, it's gonna look like the novel you thought you were writing, but it never starts that way. It never starts that way. So just write, you know,
Yeah. That's
no
like
chapters, just write.
yeah. That's as long as you kind of either know where you're going or just write in a direction. That's like a refrain that we say here on the channel, just because if you don't like allow yourself to kind of explore yourself as a writer, you're not going to grow. A lot of writers maybe will get afraid of writing in a certain way, but really, if you develop a voice and develop a style, um, and complete a work, that's number one. Um, you can work with someone else to help you develop it into what you want it to be. You
Mhm.
can take the time after you've written it, you can take that month or two to forget everything you wrote and then go back to it and read it as a reader. That's a very valuable skill and tool to use as a writer. It's very like common right now for writers to put a book out like super quickly as soon as they can, and to the point where they're putting out multiple books a year, but are they spending the time with those works to kind of like make them be what they could be? And are they, that's just something that I'm conscious of. And I don't know, maybe you're conscious of too as
Oh,
you
I am. That's, yeah, like I said earlier, I put books down and come back because I want to forget where the story went so that when I'm reading it, if I go back and I read it and I'm like, okay, wait, how did I get there? If I'm asking myself that question, then so is the reader. So you missed something, or that foreshadowing piece you thought you put in, you really didn't. So this doesn't make sense. So I am a fan of going back and rereading. Like Elysium for me didn't have structure. I didn't pre-plan Elysium. I didn't write down what I wanted every chapter to be or what the character was going to become. I just wrote and I let it go wherever it took me as long as it made sense in my world. It's a sci-fi book, so it's only going to make sense to me, but it needed to make sense in a way that when I read it I felt good about it, and it wasn't trying too hard. It wasn't putting things in a box when it really should be in a case, right? So I think just being able to be honest with yourself to say, yeah, you're going to put this book out and you're going to need to find a stopping point because you can't edit from now until, next Tuesday. Um, just be happy with where you stop.
yeah. And one of my favorite writers said, now he has many books out. He's decades into his author journey. Um, but he said he looks back at his previous earlier works and is like would critique them like to the end of time.
He's like, what are you doing?
Right. So in reality and in actuality, as it happens, each book is kind of going to be a benchmark in your journey as a writer. I know like book one, book two is way easier for me to kind of write than book one was.
Mm.
Book three might be more difficult for me to write than book two. I don't know, but it's gonna challenge me to um, really take a look at not only the continuity between one book or two or three, it's gonna be seven. So
It's like your whole wall in your office is going to be like, don't forget this part. I often think about that. I'm like, okay, I'm writing 3 books. I can't forget that I did not say that in book one when I reference
yeah.
it in book three. It's yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And that didn't occur to me until right now. So I'm like thinking, oh my God, is seven too much for me to have like committed to in
Nah, just kill all your characters off, which you can't do because they're immortal, and start with the who new set.
well, so they can die. So there is that.
There you go.
Um,
That's the answer to everything. Like Game of Thrones, just kill the whole cast off and start new.
yeah. Hey, every 100 years around, there's like a whole new set of people around. So
It's done.
it's the story of humanity.
Yeah, that's evolution. I mean, that's real.
And part of so the immortal philosophers, just to give you a little bit more background of my work, is it reflects a lot of my experiences and readings in philosophy as well, because I have degrees in literature with creative writing and then a degree in philosophy and religion. So some of the favorite philosophers of mine have different kind of metaphysics that I bring into the book and that they kind of like live by. And in addition to just their normal personalities, but also they're kind of governed a little bit by their philosophies. And one of the characters is Marcus Aurelius,
Mm,
and he was
we
like,
all know him.
what?
I said we all know Marcus.
Yeah, okay, good. I thought
I
so.
say we all do, but I mean, it's a if if
A
anybody's
lot of
paying
people,
attention, yeah.
yeah, it seems like if you see a quote anywhere, it's like probably 50% chance it's gonna be his. Um, but he's immortal. And not only is he immortal, he is a father.
Mm.
if anyone, if you know a little bit of history about Marcus Aurelius, first of all, the characters that are around now give him a hard time about, maybe being loose with his philosophy, even though he pretends to be so rigid with it. Um, but also the effect of being a father and him taking on the role of fatherhood after his son like became a sadistic ruler in Rome in real life. Um, so it kind of it brings in a lot of different things that show a little bit of the human history and a little bit about like spirituality, metaphysics, philosophy, and just to like really tackle struggles that are around today in very kind of simplified ways that maybe like a family would how like in the way a family would communicate lessons and stuff.
Hmm.
So especially in book two, um, in book one, Dylan's kind of like becoming himself. Book two, he's kind of like finding his place in this new family in a way. And I think that as LGBTQ people, and you yourself can speak to this, um, we have this idea, we grow up, we become ourselves, and we're individuals. But then also settling back into that family dynamic and um, how we can feel about that and maybe resent that, be afraid of that. How do you kind of talk about like that perspective in maybe your podcast and maybe in your book?
About growing up and coming back into either my family or creating my family.
Yeah,
Which,
in both.
well, I had a very fairy tale childhood. I grew up in Panama. Um, so I was there until I was 10. We spent a lot of time in our little city, which was near the canal zone. So my backyard was literally the Panama Canal. So we got to see a lot of ship travel, military ships and cargo ships, and you know all the giant ships that have thousands of cars in them. We got to see those. So, I mean, it's we take it for granted because it was what we saw on a daily basis. And you move here to the United States, you recognize that not a lot of people get to see that. So growing up in Panama was a community by definition. We knew everybody, everybody knew us, face recognition, our family name was pretty prevalent where we lived. Moving to the United States was my first exposure into prejudice. So that was something that was very foreign to me until I moved to the United States. The prejudice against Black people, less so the LGBTQ side because I was in the closet till I was like 21. Um, but there was still that fear of being discovered. So that was all always, on the back burner of my mind. So learning to navigate that and learning to navigate the LGBTQ space was something that I now take into my adulthood, and I'm able to share that with my kid and be able to raise him in a way that says, these things exist. Here is how I can prepare you for that from a racial perspective. Here's how I can prepare you for the conversations of people that ask you about your two dads. How did that come to be? Why do you have two dads? Let's prepare you for that. But it's also conversations that, when I first came out, I also had to have with my parents, right? Granted, I was an adult when I came out, so those conversations weren't necessarily any easier, but I wasn't under threat of being kicked out. So the dynamic there is a little bit different. But on my podcast, we certainly focus on, hey, you have kids. How do you manage the school system? How do you navigate the teachers that are asking questions? Is this your brother? No, this is my husband. First of all, does he look like me? That, my husband is white and I am Black. Our kid is a mixed race kid. We've been blessed that way. But he has red hair. And neither of us have red hair. So there's always like, oh, well, he gets his red hair from his mom. Who's his mom? And we're like, that's what you're focusing on? The red hair. Okay. No, mom's not in the picture on this one. So it's conversations like that that we often have to have with him because the questions around the red hair are directed to him. So when you don't see the mom around, it's like, does your mom have red hair? It's like, so now he knows how to engage, how to answer those questions. He knows he's adopted. You know, the ability to continue to be transparent with your kids, with your friends on a lot of topics, I think is key and important. We don't hide things from our kid because that only hurts him. If we're not willing to have those conversations, those hard conversations with him now, he will go somewhere else and find someone who's willing to have that conversation and perhaps even learn the wrong things. So those are, just some examples of the things that I bring from my childhood. My parents were always very straight and direct and clear with me. Obviously, age appropriate type stuff. You don't need to know our finances when you're 5, but we can teach you about our finances, when you're 15 or 16. We can talk about what that looks like, right? So there's always an age appropriate conversation, but it's never a that's not for you or it's none of your business or, mind your business or um we don't for example, we don't say like bad words are words you don't use. They're adult words. And that makes a difference because while we don't use it in this house, adults do use it. And you shouldn't be wagging your finger at an adult going, you shouldn't be using that. No, no, they're an adult. They're allowed to use it if that's what they choose to. You're not an adult. You don't get to use it. So those are conversations that we tend to have on our podcast. Some of that is in my book as well as experiences. We've gone down routes and paths that we've often had to back out of, like, oh no, we probably shouldn't have done that. It's a learning experience, right? So it's, you know, conversations that we start and make sure. Another example is talking about things like sex. That's prevalent in our world. You see it on TV, you read it in books, you hear it on radio, you have posters, it's in movies. So we have very frank conversations about that. We can always talk about what sex is, what it looks like between men, women, men, women, women. Do we need to get into the details? No. Do we need to talk about what we do in our personal life? No. But there's always a clinical way of describing and providing context that is age appropriate for kids. So I'm just excited to be able, again, on the podcast, to be able to say, how do you do it? What do you think is right? You don't want to talk to your kids about sex until they're 17. Okay, tell me why. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want to understand why. And then maybe you've got some great points that I never thought about. I don't know. So by
Yeah.
design, we're not there to change anyone's mind. If they find themselves going, okay, that makes sense. I want to use that. Great. If you hear something on the podcast and you're like, that makes no sense, I'm not going to use that. Great. That's the whole point, for you to be able to make some decisions that are specific to you.
Yeah. And in very much the same vein of like, we feature authors from all different genres, and who have all different styles. We talk a lot about the difference between publishing through the like traditional way and then self-publishing too.
Mm-hmm.
And the different steps that authors take through marketing. And really, it's just to show the variety that is out there so you can kind of see what you feel comfortable with. And, that can help you. Use that to help you.
So what
Um,
I will say along that line, if you allow me to provide just some experience, not experience, but thoughts that I've had through my writing journey, I've often felt like the promotional avenues for authors has always felt to me like a money grab. And I think a lot of people tend to shy away from it and go the self-publishing route. Well, I've gone the self-publishing route because I want to write and I want to put things out, right? Now it may come around at some point where someone looks at it and goes, hey, let's put this into some other category that's not self-publishing. Great, let's do that. But I've gone through, when I used to do screenplays, of getting an agent and seeing how much of that is not me. And it's so important for people to continue to be true to themselves, right? You're going to sell your product. Make sure you're because your product is you as well. You're the author. You're selling your book, but you're selling yourself as well because you're going to write other material. But if you ever put yourself in a category where you don't feel comfortable, you need to be able to raise your hand and say, no, that's not for me. So I think that's along the lines of where you were going, but I think that authenticity is what's going to show through whenever that book actually catches fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And what ways do you, well, the money grab aspect we've also seen like kind of in the social media space too, where, you know, it seems like creators like to get books from authors and feature them in a little video and
Mm-hmm.
have them on their bookshelf and charge the author though for that feature. Um, which was kind of like a shock to me because they're also making content around how important it is for LGBTQ voices to be out there. So it was like after publishing, and I published self-published through Four Elements Press. That was the first book that our press launched. Um, but when we were like approached by creators, and then also when we would be having conversations with different creators, like, oh, like your page is so fun. Your followers are like they love you, they love all the books that you feature. Um, we have a book too, but they would come back with like a pretty much in like a menu of like what you would like and then the price. And it's really ridiculous. Like these,
It's a turn off.
it's like it's so disingenuous. And then some of these creators will not post anything for 3 months. So like what are you creating a community or are you just feeding yourself? I don't know. Like, have you had experiences in that space?
So I was off of social media for years. Like I didn't have a Facebook, an Instagram, anything like I think I had a TikTok, but it was like a viewing TikTok. Like it was just some generic TikTok so I could see TikToks for years. And it's at the beginning of this year when I first started to like write books and stuff like that that I really got back on social media. And everyone wants to have 35,000 followers, right? That's really nice to have. My goal was not to have 35,000. My goal was to put my stuff out there and eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed that would come. But if I focused on how many people followed me, I would never be happy, right? Because that number wouldn't come fast enough and that goal line would always move. You get to 35, now you want a million. You get to a million, now you want 2 million. So it's like never ending story. But I had a lot of people approach me when I was putting out books. Hey, if you're looking for an editor, let me know. I'm happy to help. And I would say, oh, wow, that's fantastic. Like, great. Tell me more. Oh, well, for this package of 200 and something, really? Like, okay, no. I'm just starting the process. I can't. Can I afford 200? Sure, but what am I getting? It's something I can do on my own. Unless you're putting me through a publishing process, that's a whole thing, right? That leads to my book being, you doing this, and that was not my experience. And even on the podcast side, I have a lot of people that reach out and they're like, "Hey, let me help you edit your podcast. It sounds like you have, 13 or 14 episodes out there. That's great. They sound great." And did you listen to it? No, I have not listened to it, but we can help you with your sound. And it's like, how, if you have not listened to it, what are you telling me about my sound? Like, no thanks. So
Yeah,
I
and
tend
it's
to be
like
very
auto
discerning in that way these days.
it's like the replies always come back like in a second too, and like it's always like a scripted thing. It's
Yep.
crazy.
It's generic. It's not tailored towards any one individual. And I get it. If you're reaching out to a few people, you want to hook them, right? But at the same time, once you have someone that responds to you, are you a person or are you an AI? Like, let's really get down to,
That's really interesting too that you bring that up.
yeah, AI is a big thing now on Instagram where they've got this, they're trying to train their model and use your AI. They're going to respond for you and be able to provide blah 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 blah. Because I clicked on one, I was like, what is this? I wanted to know, and I was talking, it was giving me all sorts of weird answers, and I was like, why would I allow this AI to talk to Alex about my book when they have no idea? The AI hasn't read the book. Like, they don't know what. Anyway, I digress. I'm getting a little passionate about it, but I am fearful that a lot of people would have paid for some of these services thinking that it's to their benefit. It sounds great. Yes, I need help with this. Get more followers if you do this, but you have to pay me that. And people, do that and then learn the hard way that the followers you may have are not even caring about what you're putting out. So
Yeah. In I I don't want to think about it like this, but in a lot of ways, it's like paying for like reviews on like restaurants sometimes will like pay this service to like get them 300 5-star reviews to the point that like if you look on Google Maps or other rating services, like you can't even go by the reviews anymore because um they could be AI. They could literally be AI bots, a lot of comments, a lot of things on social media. Like if you start engaging with bots, they'll just start like attacking your profile too. So like I think in terms of how we kind of think about social media and like these tools is to help us tailor the community that we surround ourselves with, and to know and make sure that we're kind of keeping ourselves within a supportive environment. And then for creators and people like myself with through Four Elements Press, engage with us as we kind of take the conversation to the other side. Because at least in that way, you don't have to deal with the craziness and spike your anxiety and
I think a lot of people they just have a desire to have genuine interactions, right? So if you say you're going to do this, do it. Or if you say you are building a community like you and I are doing, then why does that cost me something? Right? It shouldn't cost anything to be a part of the community. Now, if you're offering me a service, that's different. Yeah.
completely. Yeah.
We're going to pay for service because if you're as good as you say you are, then we need to pay you what you're worth. Right? We're not trying to haggle and get discounts. And that if you say you're worth this much, then this is what we're going to pay you. But to just be part of a community, come on, come on.
It makes it so it's not a community.
No, it's a service
Right, right.
hidden as a community. It's kind of like queer baiting, right?
Yeah.
Come look at me. I'm straight, but I'm gonna pretend like no, I just didn't answer your question. Like I'm being ambiguous. Okay, gotcha. Which we get a lot of that on. I mean, there are a lot of pitfalls on social media, so it's more of just kind of learning what some of these techniques are that people are using to get your attention and being able to ask the right questions and always remembering to remain professional, right? You don't want to be mean to someone because they're trying to do something that they believe is the right thing to do and doesn't necessarily agree with what you're trying to do. Just, I appreciate it. No, thank you. It's not for me. And
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah, and these connections as, we're making through these networks, that goes to help, grow our potential future too. So in terms of, learning about different authors, different methods, maybe through marketing, for publishing, for how they launch their book too. We've heard from authors who do book readings like these Zoom conferences to launch their book, who do in-person events at bookstores, who do in-person events like we table at things like Pride locally.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
engaging also outside of social media, but with these other organizations in your communities. And maybe even if you have to drive a half hour, a lot of the times it can be worth it because these are the people who are actually maybe looking to affect change immediately in your local community, which can be very valuable. But then also, if there isn't a Pride event this year because of funding was cut from Target or any other um,
Tell
uh,
us how you really
com-
feel.
uh, then maybe you as a community can figure out how to have something,
Mm-hmm.
at least to, show that we're not invisible and to also be that place where maybe someone who's fearful right now can find some support, can learn about maybe uh, making a friend or even learn about a service that they can talk with if they are in crisis.
Well, a lot of our businesses have communities that they try to build online, right? So that they have opportunities to talk to each other about different things. So, along with what you're trying to build, just with having someone to say, "Hey, I met you online by way, of Alex's company, if you will, and now I'm able to dialogue with you and banter about the idea that I have about this book. Does it make sense? You're not going to write it for me, or maybe you will. Maybe you will ghost write it for me, or maybe we will partner and write it together. Now it's a dual authorship, um, where I'm strong in being able to do this, and you're strong at the writing, and now we can pair up and make some mega blockbuster series. Uh, I don't think there are plenty of avenues to go out and find that right now.
Yeah.
It's no one wants to work with anybody because they feel like someone's trying to steal their work.
Yeah, and even like as we have been growing the press side, because most of my growth that I was focusing on was my author side, but on the press side on social media, we're not seeing like many other voices in the space. And maybe it could be because we're mainly on threads, or maybe it could be because we're not, I don't know, as active on Blue Sky or things like that. But um, it's just interesting to see that, I saw a need for it, but then
Mm-hmm.
also just how quiet it is outside the space now that we're engaged in it is pretty shocking. Again, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity, right? I think that's the plus here. You found an area that needs water, and now you have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and you as well, because you know the perspectives that you're bringing on to your podcast are, maybe LGBTQ oriented, but at
Mhm.
least even if not, you have a perspective to kind of ask questions from where other hosts might not be able to think of.
Exactly. It's all perspective driven, and again, my podcast often features straight men as well because they have fatherhood components that resonate regardless of whether you're LGBTQ or not. And most gay men today come from straight parents. I mean, that's the way it works, right? Only straight parents, well, not only, but only straight parents naturally give birth to gay people. That's the way it works. So there's some context there to be gleaned from straight people as well, which is why I think it's important to never exclude an audience just because you don't know whether they can provide
Yeah.
information. You don't know because you've excluded them. So include them so that you can go, yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as we come close to the end here, do you have any message for maybe anyone looking to get their story out there or like take that next step and look for publishing or maybe even start writing their book?
So if you're an aspiring author, right, and you may not even be comfortable calling yourself that as someone who's starting the journey, I know I wasn't. I was like, I'm just a writer. I'm just writing things. I'm not an author. Even when I use the term, I'm a published writer, I always say self-published. It's still kind of weird to say just because it's like it's that path of coming into the reality of the work that you've completed. But nonetheless, my biggest advice again would be just start. Whether whether you finish or not, that's not the goal. The goal is to start. If you more than most people would do in their lifetime, in their existence. So, and then certainly if you can find a community, if you can find genuine people that are not necessarily waiting to invest in you, but at least listening, wanting to listen to what you have to say and have that experience in that industry, I think that's a gold mine, right? Because it's not easy to reach out to someone and go, "Hey, I have some thoughts and some questions," and they go, "Yeah, okay, I have 5 minutes. Let me." Time is money, is what we've been taught, right? So if you ain't got money, I don't have the time for you. That's such a bad and poor attitude to have. You have 5 minutes, right? After 5 minutes, maybe we start talking about, okay, this has become a little bit more than we intended it to be. We can talk about other things that may be service oriented, but maybe, just trading an email sometimes is enough.
Yeah, it's so true. Because getting over the fear of writing is part of the experience of getting your first book out there.
It's the
But
fear of rejection, right? Not being good enough,
yeah,
right? Because I think we all start our journey looking at what the end is, and you hear about all these musical artists that are out there that are big now, and they're like, yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years and I've just now become the biggest artist in the world, like overnight. No, it wasn't overnight. It's been 15 years. So it's like, just, start somewhere.
yeah, and don't be afraid to learn too, because as you're saying, like feel free to reach out to people who are just kind of doing something that you might see yourself doing in a way. And at least, maybe they can point you in a direction for some like verified help.
Yeah. Yeah. Find your tribe is what I say. Find your tribe. You may have multiple tribes, but go out looking for someone who is trying to do something community wise. Look for that individual instead of looking for the CEO of, some giant publishing company who's not even reading your emails. And now you feel like no one's listening because they really aren't. You're not on their radar. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're not ready to be on their radar yet. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be realistic. I mean, you're just now starting this journey. There are going to be missteps. Is my first book, Elysium, the best it could be? Probably not. But you know what? It's done. It's out there. I'm proud of that. You know, I look back at it 10 years from now and I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, and the imposter syndrome, I think, too, comes from,
Yep, spot on.
well, it comes into even the publishing route too, because and how society also looks at self-publishing. However, and I think that goes to show just how monopolistic and corporatized our society has become, because 100 years ago, these companies, a lot, like some of them might not be what they are today. And if you look 200 years ago, like Benjamin Franklin started his own printing press and newspaper in the spirit of being democratic, in the
Mhm.
spirit of being of what he thought, this country could be, not controlled press by like a king or a dictator. Um,
Exactly.
it's the democratization of labor and of ownership of business. So, in terms of feeling like imposters, I don't think the pizzeria down the street from me feels like an imposter because they're not Olive Garden. Like,
Exactly.
and we kind of have to kind of democratize how we look at work and how we look at labor if we want to look at it the way that maybe these millionaires look at business ownership. They look at it a as their individuality because
Mm-hmm.
it allows them the income to work for themselves, maybe. Um, and we've kind of developed this idea of success as being working for a company with a great benefits package and a great salary that's going to cap out in like 10 years. And and then what? It's great for many people. It doesn't work for most people.
We were retired with $2 in our pocket.
Right. And we're getting to the point where a lot of these systems that were in place that allowed for like our grandparents and parents to maybe retire, things like pensions, things like Social Security, those are being threatened. Pensions are pretty non-existent nowadays. And the difference between like these sources of income is people's quality of life. So in terms of thinking about your journey as a writer and then your journey as a publisher, if you are going to self-publish, I wouldn't, pull away from the experience of it because um, it's doing the work of kind of redemocratizing this monopolistic market, really.
Fair enough. That's a different way of seeing it, for sure. I my decision to go that route is not without having tried the other routes. I never had a chance to send like a complete manuscript anywhere. It was really trying to decipher who do you go with? You know, who's going to accept your vision of LGBTQ characters? Because not a lot of publishers want that, or they feel they already have enough material to balance their full scope of stuff. You know how some people are, we have 5% of LGBT, we're good. And then you have your LGBTQ specific publishers, and they're really looking for something different, right? They're really focused on the romance side. I've had a few people go, well, we're looking for more like romance, and it's just like, well, I mean, there's romance in the book, but it's not a romance book. So I was like, you know what? I'm wasting a lot of time here. I'm just gonna get this out and move on to my next book. So that's what it's not a defeatist attitude either. It is more of I need to get this out there so I can move on to my next book. And then, hopefully by whatever book 8, someone's gonna be like, oh, let's go read all 8 of those
Yeah.
and put it up on the New York Times list somehow. I don't know. Who knows?
And with your experience also growing up in Panama, do you also have Spanish versions of your work out there, or do you also write in Spanish?
I do speak Spanish, but no, not to the point where I can like write an entire novel in Spanish. Someone's gonna have to translate it for me. And I don't trust, any AI to be able to do it justice because, there's so much nuance to any language. I want to make sure that that's captured correctly in the book. So I have thought about audio book,
Yeah.
but just in concept, like I don't know. I haven't done enough research around that to know if there's value in doing that other than just to have it listed somewhere.
Would you do the narration for it?
Probably. I do narration for all my podcasts. I have a great voice.
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay anyone for it just because I feel like I can do it myself. I feel like that would be a tremendous amount of time um to be able to get that right the way that my mind works. So
Yeah, it is a big project. Whether you pay someone to do it or whether you do it yourself, it's gonna be a lot of work. But it is a very big way that readers are consuming work today, and it's something we've been thinking about and trying to figure out as well. I think, if you're comfortable doing the narration, I would go for it.
I, you know, it's I haven't dismissed it. It's just I haven't set my mind to it yet because I haven't done the research that says here's the value.
Mm.
I mean, could I do it? Yes. Could I put it up on whatever platform happens to be the case? Sure. But the amount of work that I'm going to put in, am I going to get something out of that? On this one specifically, I am curious about the ROI. Um, Maybe I should list myself somewhere so I could read someone else's book and get paid for it.
Ah, yeah.
I don't even know if that's like out there. If people like, if there's like a repository of here's the way my voice sounds. Does it sound like it could be your book?
There
It could
are some.
be your book.
There
Yeah.
are a few. Even I think like Amazon has one too. Yeah.
Oh,
But
that's gonna make me go look at this because
yeah.
that would be a good source of income if that was the case.
Yeah. And some, are looking for different things. So some might
Right.
be like, they want multiple different voices for each different character and that kind of stuff. Something that I might feel comfortable with is something more of like a nonfiction book because I wouldn't have to do all these different voices that I don't know how to do right now.
Yeah. Or
Um,
the interpretation of it that may not resonate with the author. It's like, oh, your voice is too high pitched for this one character, but I love it for the rest. Like, I don't
right, right. It's a very logistical thing. We in one of our interviews, an author actually had voice actors do the book like at the same time at the same place. So there were two voice actors, and he actually got to watch them read the book over the course of a weekend. So like it can be a very exciting experience, but it also could just be, you reading it. And I think there's value in both ways. It just I guess it's mostly based on the quality and really the work itself, the words. So yeah.
Yeah, I may look into that. I think it would be cool to do it for my autobiography. I don't know about Elysium. I may have to think about that one.
Yeah.
It's an experiment.
Yeah. Well, keep us like knowledge up to date on it all because I want to know. And it's your learning experience is our learning experience too. So if
Well,
we
I
get,
don't know, maybe I do good and it's like, hey, this guy is the it reader. I don't know. I love reading out loud. Like I'm okay with that. I recognize that it's always going to take some edits because reading for a long period of times will inevitably have some hiccup moments, and I have that on my podcast all the time. I'm okay with that because that's it's how people speak. So curious, my mind's spinning.
yeah. Well, thank you, Jameel, so much for being here. It was great getting to know you, a little bit about your work, and we're really supportive of your message for everyone in the community and all the work that you're doing to have tough conversations and really open up space for change. Do you have any?
I listen, I appreciate you reaching out because what you're doing with me is what I'm doing with others. So it's fantastic to be on the other side and building communities and making connections and being able to subsequently reach out with more information and just have a path, right? That's this what we're doing now is the building community part because now I can reach out to you, you can reach out to me, and the door is open. So I think that that is exemplifying what we're hoping to achieve through our efforts.
Yeah. And yeah, everyone out there, be open to collaboration, be open to community, because we know, and as you learn through the course of this series, there are like obstacles, there are struggles, there are illusions,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to say the least. Um, so, have this be a place where you can come get the real portrayal of things and then also maybe find some other people to kind of collaborate with. We're in the business of building community, so get engaged online, get engaged in your local community, be that change as we are trying to be. And I'm going to have all the links to Jameel's socials in the description below. I'm gonna have, the links to your website as well, and we'll have all the links to the articles and other videos of the series in the description so you can find them. And follow Jameel everywhere he is. Follow his podcast. Do you have any last words for the audience?
I don't. I other than feel free to build your community as well. If you don't find what you're looking for, start one.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone, like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Take care.